Hello and welcome to episode number 29 of the Nasty Metal Podcast. And today's episode is kind of a hodgepodge a bit. Actually, I've got at least two interesting topics to speak about. One of them being inspired by the Raven / Riot Act / Haunt show that I went to on like September 30th of this year. That was like several weeks ago by now. But it is going to be a pretty interesting topic that I kind of want to dive into, and I'll get into more on that a little bit later. So right now, again, what we have here is a pretty interesting episode. Hopefully it's not longer than maybe 50 minutes or so. We'll see. Hopefully it's at least maybe 50 minutes or probably under 50 minutes at least. Hopefully. So there's that. That's on the table for this episode. As far as others, that's probably about it. I might go into a little bit of detail on probably October or something, since we are pretty much we're near the end of October, actually. By the time this gets posted onto YouTube, it would be October 29th, so 2 days left. That means we're into Halloween. So I might have a little bit of a little topic that surrounds just the day of Halloween and some of the memories that I probably can think of. But that's about it that I can speak on now. As far as content, since normally that's the norm for most of these Nasty Metal Podcast episodes, is, well, me announcing the content, or the scheduled content, I mean. Sometimes I tend to speak faster than I can think faster, you know? So there's not a whole lot that I can announce as far as scheduled content is concerned, but there's at least a couple that I can mention. I'm not going to mention what's going to be Monday's Album of the Week episode. You'll probably find out, and it may not be the biggest surprise, but it's going to be an interesting one for those that might be interested in the band and the album that I will be spotlighting. So I'm just going to leave it there. But as far as the remainder of November and what's going to be left for December, meaning, you know, the end of the year, I mean, shit. I can't get rid of the fact that we're this far into the year. We're basically close to the end of the year, and it's been crazy. This entire year has been fucking crazy, and I can't get over it. How everything's just been so quick. Everything's just come and gone. Now, back on topic with the scheduled content. I'm not going to announce a whole lot for November. I'm just going to leave it up in the open. Because again, most of the album reviews are, at this point, are very off the cuff. So it's what I'm feeling about reviewing that day than just announcing it ahead. Because of, there's just been so much shit that has been released, and I barely get enough time to even listen to some of this stuff. I barely get enough time. So whatever is the agenda for these days is what ends up taking up most of my free time to even listen to anything. So what I tend to listen to is what ends up coming up. I mean, it depends on whoever recommends me it, you know, or at least recommends me an album, and also if it's a release that I know that I'm going to be getting hold of to begin with, or stuff I'm getting from attending these shows, you know. And that's what ends up being the case for a lot of these album reviews now. And there's just not a lot of free time to even listen to anything brand new. So it's just been crazy. So, I mean, there's even a few albums I know that I haven't gotten to that are probably should be priority listens, like the Seox album, because I'm Facebook buddies with Carmine Blades, again, the frontman for Seox. And of course, there's the brand new Razor. I know Queensryche even has dropped a new album. So there's just been a whole bunch of stuff that has been dropped still and are still dropping, and we're nearing the end of the year. So I just don't get enough time to even check any of this stuff out. And money is so fucking tight these days, so I just kind of have to go with what's available to me and what's easy for me to get to at this point. So that's just how it is. So I can't really schedule ahead very much these days. And to come on to these podcast episodes and announce what's ahead of time of what's going to be the album review, or what I can ahead of time what will be like the third episode and from the Mausoleum series. It's just been crazy. But I'm still able to get content up. I don't have a whole... And the fact that I end up moving back down to Fresno with almost not very much of my collection is also kind of made me completely uninspired to do a whole lot of other various different videos. So it's been very tedious and to the point where I'm kind of micromanaging what I'm able to kind of do with what I got to my resource. So it's a little bit hectic, but just be thankful that I'm able even to get any videos out to begin with, whether or not you even give a shit about the album that I'm reviewing or the album that I'm spotlighting as an Album of the Week episode. Be thankful that I even get anything up. And I'm just not going to stop what I'm going to do because of, they're not probably going to care about this, so I'm just going to stick to something else, The last thing I need is to have a bunch of entitled fucking people, and if you're one of those people, maybe I have no problem with losing a couple of 50 or so subscribers. Because I don't put out content just because of what I think people are going to like. I put out what I want to put out. And whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to want to be one of those that gives up and says, "Oh, I don't care about this stuff now, so I'm just going to stop then." Or even question anybody, does anybody even care? People, if there's people that watch, you know what? Honestly, just because people are not commenting on any of my videos doesn't mean that they're watching it, because of how I know that people are probably watching it are just by the viewpoint, and whether or not they're going to last for as long is up in the air about that. But am I going to lose sleep over it? Do I lose sleep over it to begin with? No, I don't. I don't give a shit. It is what it is. So I'm still going to continue. I'll continue until I say when I don't no longer want to continue. So I'm going to do this until I decide that I'm just going to drop, Rock until you drop, they say, or as the Raven album title says, rock until you drop. Or I guess if to go even more further with the same similar title phrase, I'll go with what even Def Leppard has, rock till you drop. So that is going to be my motto with this channel is, I'm going to do this until I decide that I'm going to drop everything and mind my own business and not care about YouTube anymore. It's like, I'm going to do this until I say I no longer feel like doing this. So that's where it is. So the ride is still going to be a ride, and whether it's pretty bumpy, whether it's fast, where it's rocky, I don't care. take this ride as long as I feel like I'm going to take this, and then stop it. But I guess that was a little bit of a topic there, so I'm just going to switch gears into the next topic. And I guess since we're I'm still somewhat, my mind is still, I'm trying to get this as perfect as I can, and the consistency, since my mind right here is still stuck on the fact that we're pretty much near the end of the year, and we are in the last the last week here of October, and this upcoming Monday is going to be Halloween. I guess I probably should I don't know, who knows, I may end up editing all of this out because of who knows what memories I even have left of Halloween, because when I first started doing these Nasty Metal podcast episodes, also, I should quickly bring this up, that there is no questions and answers segment, the Q&A segment. There's none, because nobody has even asked me any questions. And honestly, I've been kind of debating whether or not I should continue this, because this segment probably has turned into being a bit of a shit show, because of there's only one person that actually at least asks me any questions for even to be a freaking Q&A segment for this Nasty Metal podcast episode. So nobody else seems to be interested in giving me any questions, even answers, so I might as well just discontinue it. So this might be the first real announcement of this episode, is I'm just going to discontinue the Q&A segment, since it's obviously been very absent, and I know that's probably going to make somebody feel a little bit disappointed, but since there's nobody else on this chat or that are subscribed to me that doesn't want to give out any sort of Q&A segment, or wants to answer or ask me any questions, I'm just going to come up front and just say I am just going to discontinue it, since it's been a very not so very interesting segment, and it really didn't go over the way that I thought it was going to go over. So I'm discontinuing it. But back on topic with Halloween. Since when I first started doing these Nasty Metal podcast episodes in 2020, which is pretty much by the time COVID ended up becoming a worldwide phenomena, and it was crazy. And by the time October came, I didn't even participate in Halloween very much. I didn't do any dress up. I didn't do anything fancy. And it's very likely that I probably won't do anything fancy this year. So, but I still have a lot of fond memories of it. And my first semi-Halloween themed Nasty Metal podcast episode, I did go into my memories. And if I recall, I think I gave out a lot, or at least I told you a lot of my best memories of dressing up as either Paul Stanley for one Halloween, or dressing up as Alice Cooper for one Halloween. I even dressed, several Halloweens ago, I dressed up as Eddie, of Iron Maiden. It was the Peace of Mind Eddie, since I had bought the mask from a Spirit Halloween here in Fresno, and that's back up in Susanville, and at this point it's probably going to be a very cool collector's item. And so I just have fond memories of doing that. I even have fond memories of dressing up as the character Darkman from the Darkman movies. And that's probably about it. I even once went dressed up as, though it was an okay attempt as Jason Voorhees. And I can't recall if I even dressed up as Freddy Krueger. I know that was one thing we were kind of doing, was dressing up as Freddy Krueger for one Halloween. But I think I might have recalled bailing out. I don't know what happened there, but still, I think I gave out a lot of my favorite memories of Halloween and how I spent Halloween throughout pre-COVID. So I don't know if I have any other memories left. Oh wait, maybe there is one little memory. You know what? I might as well. You know what? I'm going to save that memory for Monday's Album of the Week episode. But it is an interesting one, and it does have a really good tie to October and Halloween and all of that. It's got a pretty good tie. But as far as other memories I probably can give out, I think I gave out all of my favorite memories of Halloween and such. But yeah, I just always, that was always something I would do each and every October prior to COVID-19 and just the pandemic. I would participate in Halloween, and I would dress up in. For the past several years, I was doing it as just a way to hand out candy, or probably here and there, maybe scare a couple of the little trick-or-treaters and so on. And that really kind of led into some pretty interesting interactions. Nothing anything severe, but really cool, sort of nice interactions, and just a great way to socialize with other people in a way, you know. But it was cool, and I kind of liked it. But these days, it's just because of the whole pandemic, it really put a big stop on it, and there's just really hasn't been anything very interesting, and I don't know whether or not I'm going to participate too much apart it, and who knows if I'm going to get any other trick-or-treaters, if we'll get any trick-or-treaters or anything this upcoming Halloween. But still, that kind of comes on to now with October and for the channel, since the beginning of October, I brought back Metaltober, and it's more of a theme than really a month thing, you know, where I start doing or introducing new topical videos just for to fit in. I did that I did it a couple of times whenever I did these Metaltober themed channel stuff, you know, whenever I started doing that. I think 2017 I did something interesting for it. And 2020, I really did something interesting for it. And here and there might have been something interesting. But this year, I just brought it back because it would be a cool theme. And it just at least fits some of the albums that at least I was reviewing or even spotlighting as an Album of the Week episode. So I was doing something pretty interesting with the theme of Metaltober. But I didn't really do a whole lot as far as interesting, exclusive sort of videos that you'll kind of see as at least as part of Metaltober. I haven't really done much of that. And the last time I did anything really special with that, again, was in 2020, where I did like music video sort of listing videos where I gave my little thoughts, whatever, and that was, it was interesting, but it really came at a cost because of the copyright claims, or even at times copyright takedowns or whatever, and it was really kind of starting to become a little pushing it towards something I didn't want to really get into, and I had to start up a Vimeo account just to post a fucking video to kind of so I can get around the sort of copyright issues. And it was something I wanted to kind of do that was interesting. And it was an idea I've always thought about doing for a long time prior to 2020. And I just wanted to do it. And boy, I had fun kind of doing it. But because of some of those copyright issues and how really bad Sony are with their copyright, they're really bad with that. I mean, at least these some of these other ones I've done recently, at least they're a claim, and yeah, there'll be ads, but I'm not going to get forced to take it down. So there's at least been a couple of times where it can be interesting. Again, I have nothing against a copyright claim, as most people are, but it's when the video ends up getting banned. Like, for example, because of, it's restricted in this part of the world and such, or just restricted around everywhere else. It becomes a little bit of a nuance, and I just didn't want to go through that again this year. So it was cool to do it one time, and that's probably about it. Keep it at one time and not try and overdo it each time. I contemplated with the idea of doing it again, but because of some of those issues that I've had, I've ran into, I just like, what, fuck it. I'm not going to redo it again. It's just one time's enough. But also, I just didn't do a whole lot. I think I ran through all of the good topics I wanted to go through as far as these Metaltober themes. And the fact that this year has just been crazy, I just haven't had enough time to really think out most of what would be a really interesting topic video for this channel. And honestly, I've been going through a lot of roadblocks, and my mind's just completely been blocked. So everything's just been a lot more wilder and much more different than it's just been very different. So maybe I'm just hoping that next year is at least going to be some, but I probably should save some of these some of this other extra topical shit as far as concerning for what's going to be like, for this channel by the next year. I'll save that for at least the December. That's Nasty Metal Podcast episode. That probably Nasty Metal Podcast episode number 31. So there you go. So now let's definitely switch gears finally this time to something else. Let's switch it now to concerts, since that's at least one really cool positive for 2022 here, at least my 2022 year, is being able to go back to attending concerts and attending shows and venues. That's really one of the coolest things. And this year I was able to attend 3. Last couple of times it's only been 1 or 2. And it's been great to finally able to do 3. And I'm possibly going to be attending a 4th one because Wasp and Armored Saint are coming down in December. And are going to be playing at the Tower Theater here in Fresno. And that's going to be fucking awesome. So I'm just glad I'm able to attend shows again. And it's a really great sign. And I've just been having a lot of fun with that. And the first concert of this year was back in July. That was July 8th at the Fulton 55. And that was seeing Anvil for the second time. And I'm just going to admit it. Anvil is the only band that I've actually have been able to see twice. I haven't been able to see any other bands twice, but Anvil has been the biggest exception. I've been able to see bands live, to see twice, and it's been fucking awesome. I was able to see Anvil twice. And again, that was a really cool show because that was White Wizard and Midnight Hellion opening up and whatever. I keep forgetting certain letters or syllables out of there. That's a bit of an issue that I run into whenever I speak, especially fast. So I digress. Oh yeah, I got some notification there, so you probably heard that loud and clear. So yeah, White Wizard opening up, and that was really great, even though it was minus John Leon. Again, he's the founder of White Wizard. He had to postpone showing, at least he had to cancel playing at the Fulton 55, even though, again, he allowed the rest of the band to tour as White Wizard, or at least play that night as White Wizard, but he just couldn't attend it. Therefore, that's why there wasn't any bass player, and why I kind of heard maybe a bit of a bass track in the background for them to play onto. But that's the only reason why I was like figuring, shit, this is the only band where I've seen an invisible bass player, the ghost bass player and everything, the phantom bass player is what I actually called it. I refer to it as the phantom bass player. That's the first time that I've ever seen a band or do something like that. But it was for obvious reasons, because John Leon couldn't make it there because he had caught COVID. So, still, it was cool to see at least some members of White Wizard play as White Wizard and play some of the classic tracks that I liked from them, especially off of the Over the Top album and the High Speed GTO EP. It was really great to hear some of those songs. And Midnight Hellion, who I wasn't hugely familiar with, but I knew of their existence. They put on a great show, and of course Anvil, again coming off touring for their Impact is Imminent album that was dropped this year, and that was great. So, and then to even be able to do back-to-back concerts, again in like September 30th to October 7th, be able to see two, just attend great fucking shows back-to-back. Again, September 30th was Raven on their Wiped Out 40th anniversary tour with Riot Act and Haunt opening up, and that was awesome. And I'm soon going to get back to that. I'll get back to the Raven and Haunt thing, I'll get back to that concert there. But since this is the first Nasty Metal podcast where I can speak about more about some of these the shows and stuff, since I had released a podcast episode prior to attending both the Raven and Scorpions one. And speaking of Scorpions, that was on October 7th, and that's my first time in a long time being back at the Save Mart Center. And the last time I've been at the Save Mart Center was 2017, I believe. Yeah, it was 2017. And that was for a WWE SmackDown Live TV airing. And again, that's like the first time whenever people ask me sort of questions or bring up one of those activity questions where you name off what you've done or this and that. And normally some of the questions are have you ever been on TV? And that's my only claim to actual TV fame, is actually being in pretty much near the stage audience area. And if you ever go to that episode that aired in 2017 from February, I think from Fresno, for at least WWE SmackDown Live, you'll actually get a small glimpse of me. So it's funny. But yeah, that's my only claim to TV fame, whatever, is just attending that and actually being near the cameras and shit. So that was a really cool experience. But that was the last time I've been inside the Save Mart Center, and it was great to be back in there, and this time to actually attend my first concert attendance at the Save Mart Center, because I've only ever attended wrestling events at the Save Mart Center. Never really any concert, and it was great to actually attend there for at least a band that I fucking like, and that's Scorpions. And of course, I wanted to check out Thunder Mother, and they were really good too. So it was just great to really experience all that. And again, it's been so long since I've experienced such a concert with a big production and just stage setting and the lights and the animated graphics on the LED screen and that they pretty much have in the background. And it's been such a long time since I've attended a concert like that, because the first time I've attended such a concert of that magnitude was when I saw Judas Priest back in October of 2015. So there you go. There's a bit of a small October memory there. Again, on the Redeemer of Souls tour. And that was really awesome. It was actually at the William Sorian Theater here in Fresno. And it's an interesting theater or so, though I kind of would have wished, after being so impressed by the stage setting and the sound setting inside the Save Mart Center, I kind of wish that's where I saw Judas Priest at. But still, I wanted to see Judas Priest. Though I was not crazy about Mastodon opening up for Judas Priest. I wasn't too crazy about Mastodon, and again, I'm still not crazy about Mastodon. I still find them to be a very overrated band, and it's actually the one band where my brother ended up falling asleep to. Yeah. And I don't fall asleep to any concert because I am such an open-minded guy. I'll stand there or sit there depending on what's inside these venues, whether they've got chairs or they don't have chairs. So, seating, whatever. And I'm at least one of those that will pay attention and see what they're like. I don't care what genre it is to begin with, if it's prog, doom, death, thrash, possibly maybe even psychedelic stuff. I don't care what kind of rock or metal genre it is, though I'm not sure if I'm crazy about the band that's going to be playing at the Fulton 55, possibly maybe November of this year, or maybe January of next year. I can't really think about that. But still, it really, most of the time it depends on who I want to go and see. But still, the opening bands are just in for the ride. You know, I find them just be like, well, they're going to be there, and we'll see what I think, you know, we'll see what I feel. Now, it's kind of the way I was with the Anvil, when I first saw Anvil in 2019 on the Pounding the Pavement tour at the Fulton 55, and that was my first time attending the Fulton 55 here in Fresno, California. And that was Archer Nation opening up for Anvil. And up to that point, I didn't know who the fuck Archer Nation was. And if it wasn't for, I would say, Anvil's merch lady, I believe. I think it was their merch lady, and real nice gal to talk to. She was real cool and everything. And she was convincing me, no, you better check them out. Probably buy that. They're a really good band. So I still was kind of on the fence, but after I witnessed their set, I just was like, okay, I'm gonna go and finally pick this up, because for me, I have to have a good first impression of a band in order to feel inspired to go and pay the money, you know, to pick up the physical copy. So I finally did, and that's when I ended up speaking to the main guy of Archer Nation, both the guitar player and the singer, whose name is escaping me again right now, but he was a really cool guy too. I actually got into, again, a pretty cool conversation with him. So there were some really good memories there, but that was a really cool experience. So it's just been great to really kind of go to some of these shows and see some different bands and see on just how they are, and that's just how I am. I just want to be more open-minded and see what they're like. Even if they're probably gonna end up being shit, I'll still stand there, sit there, whatever, and just listen and see if it does anything for me. Like what I will do every time with a album or any sort of record, I'll do the same. See if it's going to do anything for me. If it still doesn't do anything for me, I'll pretty much just write them off and say, yeah, I'm just not that crazy about that band there. But if they impress me a lot, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are fucking great. And I'm definitely going to buy some, and I'm definitely going to recommend them to my viewers. That's the way I'm going to be. So, just a lot of that's just how I am. But again, Mastodon didn't do shit for me. And I didn't feel too sleepy. I wasn't really that bored, but because again, I've got an open mind, and I wanted to kind of at least give them a chance, since I never listened to a diddly fucking squat of their music. But still, obviously, the band of the night was Judas Priest. And I left that concert still thinking, yeah, it was just awesome to see Judas Priest. Mastodon, they do nothing for me. But when it comes to some of these other bands, like when it came to like the Anvil, the two times I've seen Anvil and the Scorpions one and the Raven one, it's been really cool. Of course, one of the really interesting things about the Raven one was that I also wanted to see Riot Act because it was Rick Ventura, because I'm a big Riot fan, and especially the era that he was in Riot, you know, from like Narita up to about Born in America. I'm a fan of those fucking records, so I want to at least hear some of those classic songs. I want to see him play, and I was able to get that. I was going to be really bummed if they didn't show up, because if they had already canceled that show. They canceled it, and I could never figure out why they canceled it, and they never announced why they canceled that show. And again, it just hasn't been answer, you know, it just hasn't been said. So I just, again, they've not explained why, is what I'm getting at. And I just was like, shit, I'm not going to get to see them, but sure, I'm ecstatic to see Haunt and, of course, Raven. But then going there and attending the show and just being shocked that they decided to play anyways. Again, they were setting up their merch booth. They were pretty much going to come right before Haunt. They came after the Eye of Aquila, I think they were called, or something like that. Eye of Aquila. Really interesting again, stoner band. I kind of went into a pretty decent detail about them on my concert review for the Raven Wiped Out at Strummers video. And that was my first time attending Strummers anyways. But that was really cool. And it was awesome to see them, just them opening up with the song Rock City. And I'm like, oh my God. I went into like basically singing every fucking note of each song that they played, because of it's like I recognized every single one. I knew every one of the lyrics. I knew every bit of the songs. It was just, it was fucking amazing. And the same thing with Raven, and it was awesome. So there we go, and then of course fast forwarding again to the week later with Scorpions and Thunder Mother, and it was just awesome, and I pretty much recognized pretty much every song that they played. One thing that I was a little bit surprised by is that they really stuck. Of course, they stuck mostly to their 80s stuff, though they played at least, it was 3 tracks off of the Crazy World album. But they've at least played some stuff off the 80s stuff for the most part, except for Savage Amusement, I was at least glad that they at least omitted stuff from Savage Amusement, because I just don't care for that album from Scorpions. But everything from like Animal Magnetism, which they only played 2 songs off of, again, after going from Gas in the Tank, which is off the brand new album Rock Believer, they then went into Make It Real. Alright, finally came to my mind. And then eventually afterwards, they then went into The Zoo. And it was awesome. Back-to-back awesome tracks. Again, both off of the Animal Magnetism album. I believe that's how that went, the order there. But again, they went to Make It Real, and then The Zoo. It was awesome. And then, of course, playing Seventh Son. They played some cool. They played 4 tracks off the new album, which fit right in with most of the stuff off of Animal Magnetism, Blackout, and of course, even like Love Drive. It really fit. Even to an extent, the Love at First Sting album, which again, that's mostly the albums that they stuck to, is basically Love Drive, Animal Magnetism, Blackout, Love at First Sting, A Crazy World, and of course, the new album Rock Believer. That's pretty much the albums that they stuck to, and I would say it was a pretty decent selection, and I enjoyed most of the stuff that they played. So I was still happy to see Scorpions. I was a happy camper. So it was just great. Now, since it's amazing that I'm able to attend concerts again, and I know everybody else is happy that they're able to attend concerts again, because it's one of the greatest activities to do is to attend shows, hear new bands probably, and see some bands that you probably, who knows if you'll ever get to see again, because we're nearing a very interesting end here for a lot of bands. Again, there's this, you don't know what's going to happen by the next decade or something. You just don't know, or even close to the end of this decade. You don't know what's going to be like for the climate of some of these classic bands, because some of these members, you don't know how much longer they even have. Sometimes it's just out of the blue with some of these members because of whether the shit they did to themselves from years ago. You just don't know. It's borrowed time basically for everybody. It's borrowed time for a lot of these bands. So you kind of have to take the chance and just go and see them. Even if you have to make up the money to go and see them, you still kind of have to. And so you at least have one last memory of them. So for me, since I'm still pretty young and some of these bands are not getting any younger, they're getting older, you kind of have to take the chance and go and see them. And that's kind of what I've been kind of doing, is market every sort of band that I can. Since I never got the mark off Motorhead, I never got the mark off fucking Dio, I never got to see some of these bands, like, again, Motorhead and Dio and so on. I still haven't even seen AC/DC, but I never got to see AC/DC when Malcolm Young was still alive, So it's just been the luck of the draw almost with these bands. It's becoming the luck of the draw. So you kind of have to take the chance and take the plunge and just do it. Bite the bullet. So now to kind of go back now to the Strummers show, which again was Raven on their Wiped Out 40th anniversary tour. I kind of have to bring up a little thing. And when I did my review for that video, this Wiped Out of Strummers video, when I was speaking about Haunt, I left out one detail of, and I got it all, a little bit of it recorded. I didn't record his whole entire conversation or something, or him announcing it, because he announced something on that night. It was a really interesting announcement, and I really do want to touch on that. And it really kind of comes into another sort of interesting possibility for Fresno, and especially when it comes to a lot of the concert tent and just the concert activities and different bands that are probably, who knows, when it comes to next year, who's going to come down next year, It really kind of brings up other interesting possibilities, and he announced something, is what I'm getting at. He announced something, and I left it out of that video, and after I got done filming that video, I started thinking to myself, oh shit, I think I made a mistake. And for a while there, I thought I did make a mistake by leaving this little piece of information out of there, because it really was an interesting one. But then as I kept thinking further and further, by each day and each week going by, I'm like thinking to myself, maybe it's a good thing that I left it out. Because I think since, I don't know whether or not if it's a good idea if I would have just threw it in there to begin with. And maybe it's a better idea to maybe touch on this for this podcast episode. So what I am alluding to is, well, Trevor William Church announcing that for June of 2023, he is looking into starting a festival here in Fresno, and he didn't really go into a lot of details on what bands he was going to do or where this festival is going to either take place, but he at least announced that he's going to do a metal festival here in Fresno. Since it's one of the biggest activities for a lot of bands, is since a lot of, especially here in the United States, we've been getting some festivals, but they've all been at least in the Northwest area, being like Oregon, or was it Washington, or somewhere out there. There's like the Northwest Metal Fest, and there's Hellfest. I think that's all the way in Texas, I believe. I think that's probably all the way in Texas, if I'm correct. But there's just a whole bunch of these different fests that are going around here in the United States, and most of the more famous festivals for a lot of these underground metal bands or others sort of semi-recognized metal bands from the 80s to, of course, to now. That's all in Europe. Like there's Wacken Open Air and Keep It True. Was it Defenders of the Old Faith? And I think, I forgot where that's at. But there's just so many different metal fests that are going around here in the world and in Europe and here in the United States. But there's none here in the California area. Really, to be honest, there's not a whole lot that are attractive enough for some of these bands like Possessed or even Anvil or some of the European new wave or traditional heavy metal bands, like Enforcer, Bullet, Ram, and so on. There's not a whole lot of festivals or metal fests that are attractive enough. And so it's really kind of interesting to know that Trevor William Church is looking on to rectify that and giving Fresno or California really its own metal fest for something that would be a cool attraction to people all across the United States and maybe even Europe. I don't know. Maybe they get a passport to come down and see some of these bands, but really for something for especially who we got here in the California area, from like Los Angeles to Fresno here, of course, to San Francisco and Sacramento and yada, yada, yada. There's at least plenty of metal fans that do follow a lot of the more obscure and more underground metal bands that are still underground to its day, are still semi-underground, and some of the more new wave for traditional metal bands and yada, yada, yada. There's a bunch of them. Thrash metal bands, death metal bands, black metal bands. There's so much of them. Progressive metal, stoner rock, stoner doom. What the fuck? There's a bunch of fans that follow these scenes that attract the labels like High Roller Records and Shadow Kingdom Records and, of course, Hell's Headbangers, Stormspell. And there's a bunch of them. Dive Bomb Records. There's a bunch of these labels that will attract these newer bands. And there's really not a metal fest here in the California area that might attract some of these other bands and some of these labels to promote. There's not a lot. So it's really, because since Trevor William Church has been gaining a pretty good reputation here in Fresno, as probably being Fresno's main metal mogul or something. He is like got a big reputation as being almost a hero for the metal genre, especially the underground metal genre here in Fresno and probably around California. Just the way that guys like Ronnie Montrose was in the 70s for a lot of guitar heroes in the California era that led into, the rise of like Eddie Van Halen. Trevor is kind of doing the same thing for a lot of the underground metal bands. He's becoming a pretty good advocate for that. So it's really kind of interesting, though, that he's planning on doing a metal fest for Fresno, California, and he is planning it to be taking place sometime in June of 2023. And the only thing he said, or at least saying before going into, what song was it? I think Burst into Flame, probably. I think he was going into like Burst into Flame, because it was like close to the end of the set list for Han. And he just ended up saying, you guys ain't going to believe on what bands I'm going to be bringing down. So he's got something up his sleeve for this. So that's kind of the one thing I wanted to kind of touch on for this episode, is really kind of touch upon the fact that Fresno, California might be getting its metal festival that could end up being a pretty good attraction for everybody else across the United States or even here in California. That will be a great way to expose some of these other bands to this area. And who knows where this festival is going to take place at, but he could since he's got maybe some pull with the guys of Fulton 55 and Strummers, there's a very good possibility that there might be a way that will combine maybe these two, maybe do something even big, probably. Who knows, depending on how much money or how much attraction this is going to gain. It'd be interesting on where this is going to take place at, and if this is going to be a week thing, like maybe across 3 days, 2 days, depending on how many bands he's going to bring out. It's going to be 8 bands, 6 bands. How many bands is it, and how long is it? Like, what day is it going to be, and what's going to be how long for the day, and where is it, what's going to be the place that this concert or festival is going to take place at? Is it going to be indoors or will it be outdoors? That's all the questions that are up in the air right now, and he just was very kind of vague about it, but he really is very adamant that, and very much pretty stoked about doing this, and it's going to be a pretty good project for him. And I really see him on if it's going to get a lot of good funding for here, and it's going to be a great way to get more bands down to Fresno that, who knows, haven't had a chance to play here. So I'm really kind of curious about this, and I think the fact that I'm the one that might be announcing this on this channel, or at least talking about this is going to get, hopefully this might get some conversation going, and it's going to really bring up a lot of interesting things. So I'm really looking forward to what's coming our way here in Fresno, California for a Metal Fest in June of 2023. So I am really looking forward to that. So it could be different. He might, who knows what he's got up his sleeve. For all I know, maybe the bands he might bring in down are probably going to be, of course, friends of his. But he can end up pulling a really cool curveball and might introduce some bands that he might have gotten in contact with from maybe outside of the United States. We don't know. I know he's a very big fan of the bands out of Sweden, for an example, and he does like some of the British bands. And I know he does got some pull, as maybe with some of the U.S. New wave or traditional heavy metal bands, probably like Night Demon and so on. So there's a very good possibility that they might end up playing this festival maybe, or this Metal Fest, whatever that he's got up his sleeve. And there's not even a name for this Metal Fest, so this is just gonna be a very cool idea that can end up becoming a dream come true by next year. So I am really very curious and very enthusiastic for this. This is really going to be something I don't think this town or city has ever seen. We're going to get something fucking awesome maybe. I'm really kind of just very curious on what this is going to end up turning out to be, and I am looking all forward to it. So there you go. So that's it, folks. There's the topics for this episode. So with that, I know I announced something too. It's probably the only sad news I've even announced for this episode. So there you go. I hope all of you enjoyed. If you have any sort of thoughts on any of this, just whether it be the concerts, and it's great to attend concerts again, or what I just talked about, or just went into length about the possibility of Fresno, California getting a Metal Fest by 2023. If you have any sort of questions about that, or wants to add any comments about that, you can leave them in the comment section below. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Harry Thrasher saying I'm out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.